steadily it rises. Public preference for Lincoln Continental as the symbol for today's luxury motoring.
Hey, it's Jason ODB, the Lincoln Addict. Going to hit you guys with another video. It's been a couple of weeks since I made one of these, so if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Go back. You can see I go through a lot of reviews. Sometimes even after the auction ends, I'll look back and see if there's any maybe I missed, and I'll try to cover those as well. Just been busy the last couple of weeks, which I'll talk about on the next episode of Lincoln Addict Podcast. I'm trying to finish it up soon to get that posted. Here's bringatrailer.com. More than likely, you're not a stranger to this site if you've been on my channel. I'm going to basically do a listing review for this 67 Lincoln Continental Convertible, and we'll go through it. I'll try to keep it concise. This is a custom car, although when you look at it here, the overall appearance looks pretty stock. That's often what people are looking for, kind of either a purist is looking for a car that's not been touched, or something that's kind of a mild, what we refer to as a resto mod. Typically, I don't know that you would say that this is the resto mod, but let's look at it and you can make that determination. It ends in 5 days, as we see. Current bid $25,000. I do believe it will go much higher than that. It kind of talks about here it was sold new based upon the paperwork in this listing at Gerald Motors in Illinois, May 67. It was acquired by this seller in 2001. So it kind of reinforces they've had it for about 10 years. And, let's look at more information here. A subsequent multi-year refurbishment was completed in 2014, included finishing the car in blue, overhauling the engine trans, air suspension. It's got the factory 462 V8 and the 3-speed automatic trans. It does have AccuAir, a Mob Steel airbag kit we'll look at later, and the wheels are Bond Speeds. They've been around a long time, real solid wheel company. So the billet wheels are Bond Speed wheels. It has a Waldron's stainless steel exhaust, AM/FM radio. Service prep for the sale included repairing the top mechanism, replacing the battery, and changing the oil. So let's jump in here. If we look over here, it kind of talks about 65,000 miles and aftermarket headlights, which we will see. It does have the power front disc brakes, which were factory. We'll have to look and see if they change those out. The strong arms, that's a brand in the industry. Air Ride Technologies, I believe, makes those. And refurbished AM/FM radio. So the body came from the factory finished in powder blue, was repainted the current shade of blue during the rebuild, if you will. It talks about here, the right rear window glass is missing. The seller notes the high beam headlights cannot be switched off, and the power antenna remains in the raised position, so that's not working. So the right rear window glass is missing. So that's kind of odd, but for whatever reason, that's not there. The power-operated black convertible top was fitted with a replacement canvas in 2015. And it talks about the service in 2022 included rebuilding the upper gear drive, which is the drive that's up underneath the deck lid. So the wheels are Palisades, real nice billet wheel. Those can easily be changed, of course, if you don't like those. They do list the tire size as well. Power-assisted front discs and rear drums. So that could be factory. We'll have to look. Ride Tech, and I always get that mixed up, so I said Air Ride Technologies. My apologies. It's Ride Tech that makes the strong arms. I should know because I had a set of those. AccuAir airbag system with the electronic leveling, which is what they refer to as E-level. So we'll get into that. The drive shaft tunnel was raised, and that is a typical thing in the back under the rear seat. You would never really know, but that has to be done to accommodate the air suspension when the car is all the way out, or aired out, if you will. It talks about the seating here, nothing crazy. Notes that the air conditioning does not blow cold. So that's typical in these cars. A lot of folks will just say a quote needs to be recharged. You can often recharge the ACs, but it's better to do the full upgrade, which I'll cover in a future video because I have been working to do that upgrade in my car. The steering wheel is there, and it talks about, well, of course, it says the two-spoke steering wheel fronts a 120-mile-an-hour horizontal sweep speedometer. The 5-digit odometer shows 65K. Approximately 100 of which have been added during current ownership. So this could be just somebody that has a lot of money. They did a nice restoration, and they don't drive their car very often. I mean, that's stuff that we sometimes will see. I like to see them driven a little bit more, but, what can you do? The seller states the dashboard warning lights are illuminated at all times, so there's some challenges going on there that could be remedied by coming to some of the usual suspects. People that work on these cars, like Blair Farmer, my friend in Clearwater, he can get all that kind of stuff fixed and working. So if you're the buyer of this car, you can message me, Lincoln Addict podcast @gmail.com, and I can get you his information if you're looking to get all the stuff working. Nothing crazy here. They did replace the water pump and alternator, things like that. In here, I always like seeing this if it's possible. This is kind of rare. This is the original window sticker, and it says $7,738.58. It says the car does not have a title as it's registered in a state that does not issue titles for vehicles of its age. It's sold with its current transferable registration. Don't be alarmed by this. I obtained a car years ago, back in 08, 09 from Alabama, and I was scratching my head at first, but I looked at one of those old NADA books, I believe it was, and found that they did not title cars in Alabama until, mid-70s, which sounded kind of weird, but a lot of states did not title vehicles until a certain year, and that's what they're stating here. Don't think there would be a challenge whatsoever. Certainly in Florida, I just had to have the current registration, which allowed for me to register the car that I bought. So enough with all those details. Basically, what we're looking at here is a real nice kind of resto mod-ish 67 convertible. You can see the front three-quarter shot here. A couple things that stick out. They mentioned the headlights, which I'm a fan of swapping them out from the old bulbs. You can get a lot better lighting these days. Technology has advanced a lot, so I do like that. You also have the peak moldings, which are blacked out. So this may or may not be your style. More than likely, I'm guessing they were powder coated. They are stainless. So hypothetically, I guess if you did the right thing to them, you could take this off. Although if it's powder coat, that's going to be a little bit better or a little bit tougher. You could easily go to like Chris Dunn and team at Lincoln Land and buy more peak moldings. This, of course, is one piece here. You've got your front door, your rear door, and then the last piece here. So I believe that those are all the pieces on each side that have been blacked out, if you will. You could see that here where it comes down. Just a reminder, these are not taillights here. Those are reflectors. The taillights are here in the bumper, but I always thought that would have been a cool mod on my 67 to add the taillights there, but certainly those aren't the taillights. When we look here, love this look when the top is up, although when you have a convertible, typically the top is always going to be down. This kind of gives you that hard top look without the pillar there, so always like this view when the top is up. I think the black top really complements the paint, and it's good that it was changed. They didn't mention if the wiring was changed in the top. That is something that I always recommend. Teresa and Blair and Clearwater, they have reinforced that to me. You're talking $200 to $250 for the wiring. I would assume that was changed. And the reason for that is when it's kind of laced up through the top, you really can't get to it. Certainly can't get to it easily to change it if the canvas is all changed. That could be a question that you want to ask in the comments if we don't see it. Maybe I did miss it. You get a good side shot here on the passenger side, kind of a hot rod Lincoln-ish, again with that dark paint. I really dig it. And the wheels. Remember, if you don't like the wheels, you could easily go and swap back to the factory wheels and hubcaps. Not sure if they come with the car. I did not see that, but certainly you could acquire those or just change the wheels to something more of your liking. The interior to me looks fantastic. I really like a clean interior like this. They've got the factory seat belts, And I do believe that this was the steering column was painted while it was out. So, a couple small subtle touches there. I'm a big fan of blue cars, especially blue interior. I really dig the carpet. It looks real clean. Here you've got kind of the, someone sitting in the back seat, kind of showing you the full dash. So real classy looking there. What we see under the hood is some good things. So we've got the upgraded master cylinder, which is key. I've talked about that many times. Also, it is an AC car, so we can see the factory air conditioning stuff here. It looks like the one belt is here. I don't know if this other belt is on, but things look okay there. It does have the 2-port, so we can tell right away based upon the 2 screws. That immediately is the tell that it has the 2-port fuel pump. You can see here just 1 and 2. And we always recommend that you go with a 3-port. You're going to end up spending $300 to $400 depending on who you get it from. If it's already rebuilt, you could argue and say, well, this guy's where he's at, he never has trouble. Hey, Nathan Wilson even chimed in on one. We've seen before where people live in certain areas and they never have an issue. However, in Florida, we have definitely experienced when you have these 2-port, which are the newer style Carter fuel pumps, that will lead to vapor lock. The other thing is here, the factory heat shield-ish material, I forget what it's made out of. It kind of feels like not a foam, but I can't really think of what it is right now, but it's kind of like a little thing that wraps around here, and it helps keep the heat off of these lines. And that's important because the heat on these 430s, or in this case 462, they certainly build a lot of heat, and you can see where these headers are at. This is factory right against these aprons on both sides. These engine bays get very hot, and one thing you don't want are these lines getting really warm, because something that will happen is called vapor lock, and that'll cause the fuel to basically just almost bake before it even gets here, and the car will stall out potentially. And again, we've seen, this guy could say, hey, I've driven this car 10,000 miles and I've never had an issue. Hey, if it's not broke, then don't fix it. But that's something I would always recommend to someone, is to have the 3-port. And again, you could spend $300-400. It's super easy to install. There's 2 bolts here, and this kind of comes right off. You got to kind of push down a little bit on it because the fuel pump rod is in there. And then when you do, you just kind of bolt it back up. I always recommend, if you change the fuel filter right here as well. And again, look to put some sort of shielding on these lines. Again, in Florida, it gets super hot, and that's what I would recommend. Underneath the car, you can see they've went through great lengths to spend a lot of time to really kind of clean and paint and kind of detail, if you will. It's not perfect, but none of us are looking typically for a perfect car. You're always going to have the little scratches and little areas where maybe the paint didn't stick perfectly, or it maybe wasn't prepped perfectly. But I can certainly tell you, owning a 67 before, and any of these 60s Lincolns, there's a lot of work and kind of blowing all this stuff apart and cleaning and sandblasting and however much detail you want to go through. It's a lot. So this is definitely a nice looking car underneath. You can see here the strong arms. Those are those aftermarket lower control arms for the airbag system. These braces here, I don't often talk about it, but these are convertible only, and they help to stiffen up these unibody cars. So if you ever see these and you don't see them on the sedans, the reason why is these are a convertible item only. There are some videos, so I'm going to turn down the volume and just do what I normally do, just kind of scan through these. You can see there, even I just noticed the mirror obviously would have been done in black to match the peak moldings, but may not be your look, but you can certainly change that. Another thing I like to look at here, I've talked about this in the past, these guys here in 66, 67, they went to, these are pot metal. So typically these can look pretty nasty, these little trim pieces here. and it's kind of hard to see right there when I paused it. But those look pretty clean. More than likely, they've been either powder coated, maybe like a silver color. I can't really tell if they've been re-chromed, but they definitely don't look as ratty and nasty as many cars. And I say that because my 67, they were really, really bad. They were basically trash, and I would have had to get new ones. Here you're seeing the paint and everything, how good it looks. This may look a little odd to you. The trim piece, they decided to exclude it here in their restoration. I'm a fan of it. It's stainless and it looks really nice, but with how they built this car, it's pretty seamless looking overall. And I don't think it looks bad without it, but I did want to call that out. So what we'll do is hit escape, jump back down here, and then we got a lot of photos to go through. So if you're liking this video, please leave a comment or a thumbs up. I really appreciate it. It really helps out. Here you're seeing just how nice the interior is in the presentation. The 67 seats changed a little bit from 66. And you can see here, typically this trim, even from 66 and before would go all the way up and kind of over. So, you had that little bit of a change in 67. I'm a big fan of the 66 and prior seats, although I did have a set of 67 bucket seats, and they're pretty cool. But again, it doesn't look bad to me. I just wanted to call that out. You can see it has the rear seatbelts that match, which I mentioned earlier. Just overall, a really, really, really nice car that we're seeing. We're going to go to the next. You got underneath. So I talk about how important it is to see, video and or photos underneath these cars. And you can just see they went through a lot of detail. And I wouldn't mind any little scratches like that. And, you could just tell this car has been kind of cared for and they spent a lot of time. It also doesn't look like what I refer to as a lipstick job where people just get up underneath there and spray real quick to hide things. This looks like where when they were doing the restoration, they probably instructed, them to either sandblast underneath the car. And here you get to see, to really clean it up. I do like to look in here too to see, a little bit of surface rust. Typically we'll build in here on top of the chrome. Again, all these bumpers look fantastic. Just a lot of detail work put into this one. I want to thank Chris Dunn at Lincoln Land too. He had sent me this one. I just been, as I mentioned at the top, I've been real busy and hadn't had a chance to really go through a lot of these. And Chris sent this over and said, hey, check it out. Another good video showing the top working, the guy sitting in the car, which I always recommend. Again, keeping your foot on the brake unless the steering column has been rebuilt. That's not atypical. Sometimes there, and even when you're standing outside the car, you have to put your hand, I sometimes will even do it out of instinct, is, we'll kind of just push down a little bit on the top, and then that way the two locks will latch in. That's all automatic. But you could see him kind of pulling down on it and looking up. Don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing whatsoever, but even John Cashman would talk about when the flapper is coming up here, sometimes to put your finger up underneath it if you're outside the car and just kind of helping it a little bit, that's not a bad thing either. And you can see the flapper going down, and then one of the last steps is the deck lid to go down before it locks. So we've got that. Let's take a look and see what else we have. One more video here, and then we'll fly through the photos. So here, and then he's got the reverse cycle. He's got a box in there, it looks like. It's like a target. Yeah, based upon just the way it looked like it was going to be in the way. But obviously he's had it in there, so he knows. Okay, so when we go through the photos, you can see the kind of the halo headlights here. The grille looks really good. The bumpers look fantastic. You can see right here the reflection of the photographer, whoever's taking these photos. Really, really nice car. Kind of that hot rod look. What I would say, a couple things that I would inquire on if I was looking to buy this car would be, one, were all of the and I don't know that we saw it in here, ask about these rubbers, all of the rubber seals, were they changed? That can be a big expense for people. I'm assuming they did. From here, they actually look pretty good. Inquire about the steering column. Was the steering column rebuilt? You guys have heard me talk about the importance of that and how these cars can jump into neutral. So that would be a question that I would want to ask as well. You could just see how clean everything in here looks. This is the, parts of the AC. All of this trim looks really, really good on how it all lines up. A lot of times that can kind of get dinged and nasty and things like that over time, and it looks really, really good. There you see the halo headlights. You could always change those. The paint looks fantastic. Real nice money shot there, kind of showing the four doors open with the top down. I dig the paint color. I like it. You got a nice little offset on the wheel there, so you got a little lip, if you will. Here we get a little bit better photo. It's hard to kind of tell if all the seals were changed. When they did paint it, they did paint over the door tag. So again, that's not a deal breaker, but I like to kind of point that out. The top looks really good in these 66 and 67 convertibles, and I say that because they're basically identical in many ways. This is glass. It is not a plastic rear window like you'll see in the earlier 60s convertibles. Here he's showing the paint is not perfect, which again, if you couldn't afford to maybe go up there or see it, you would certainly want the person to be honest, and it looks like that's what he's doing. You can see here it does look like the factory brakes. So again, they kind of mentioned its front discs. That was a factory option. With a bigger wheel, typically you'll see most guys start to want to go aftermarket, maybe a CPP kit or Bear. But certainly, I'm sure this car stops pretty well, and that's just a call out that I would make. Just an observation. And as we kind of close down some of these photos, everything is looking really good. This is one thing you will see in these 66 and 67 Lincolns, even the 68. There's usually a tear right here on the kind of the speaker grill. You could get that fixed, I guess, if you really wanted. Some guys will end up looking for a nice non-cracked dash, which are very hard to find, or I'm sure you can have your local interior place. I've seen little things where people have cut this out and they put like a little a piece that kind of sits in here that actually looks kind of nice. I've seen a few different things, but certainly if that is going to frustrate you, that's one thing that you'll see on these cars. Here is the transmission tunnel, and typically this is never seen. So they'll notch underneath the rear seat a little bit, and that's because the drive shaft, you don't want it to hit underneath here when the car is airbagged. Here you can see it has the AccuAir VU4 manifold, 2 Viair compressors, which are the best in the business, and it does look like this is an AccuAir tank. I can kind of tell because I owned one of these. These systems are very reliable and certainly make it user-friendly. Like if you or your wife or significant other wanted to drive the car, you get in it, you push a button, and it levels up. Or you can have it auto set. When you get in the car, it'll go to a preset height. Here is the upgraded upper back panel switch that I mentioned earlier that's underneath the deck lid. This is key, and these are a little bit beefier motors because, as I understand it, 66, 67 does have a little bit heavier deck lid. So, this upgrade usually can run you anywhere from, I think, $600 to like $1,000 without labor. I forget the exact number if you get all the pieces and the billet internals here, the gears. But certainly John Brewer, who we've had on the podcast, he's kind of the main guy that everyone goes to. This person has taken the time to label all the relays. This is the deck open. This is the deck unlock. There's a video on YouTube of John Cashman showing how you can jump these relays and manually override these two. And then all of these guys here, you have to take off these screws, and then this panel comes off. And what they've done is they've labeled each of these relays. And you can see here current limiter, right rear latch, right rear window. All of this stuff is for the windows. In the back, they've actually went as far as, and I love this, they've labeled all of the relays for the top, which is great. You can see here they painted under the hood. You can see how clean everything is. You typically won't see a Mel 462 that doesn't leak, and this one is super clean. I really, really dig it. Really nice car. These, I don't want to go too far into it, but they do have needle bearings for these drive shafts, and those are kind of a pain when you take it out and put it back in. But this is all factory stuff, so they've carefully put everything back into order, and you can see the airbags there in the rear, and you can see the kit. Mob Steel was selling these kits a long time, and that's who they mentioned manufactured it. Bags look real good, not a lot of age to them. And all of this stuff here, you can see this is the AccuAir sensor for the height sensor. But when you look at all of this, I mean, it's a lot of work if you have a shop, blow your car apart and go and sandblast all this and paint it. This is really detailed nice, and they've spent a lot of time certainly kind of going through this. Even any of the wiring they've ran, probably for the AccuAir, it's all nice and clean and tight in there. Here's the AccuAir controller. This is the older controller, and this plug is like, I always like to refer to it as an early 2000s cell phone plug. And I always get it mixed up if it was USB 1, but it's what can tend to happen is people, if you sit on this controller when this is plugged in, it'll bend this. The newer AccuAir controllers that you can buy, and they're plug and play, they have a little bit different setup. They have like an umbilical cord that comes off of it. That way, when people sit down, if they accidentally sit on this, it won't crack that. But certainly, again, I'm not saying anything bad. I've had these before, and I just wanted to point that out, that you can upgrade plug and play. You could even go with the ECU Plus, which would is plug and play. It's about $400, and that would allow for you to control the system with your phone. So pretty cool stuff there. It does have some paperwork with it, which I always love because it shows, just different things about the car. Here you can see the original sales receipt for the car. You got some old school photos, and you can see parts will add up on these. And that could answer our question there. Deluxe weather strip kit. So look, $2,500 spent on it. Fantastic. That's why it's key to go through all of the information. There's the AccuAir information, and this is the key thing. Last thing I'll mention is, look, you can see the restoration. Someone took a lot of time to blow this car apart, and I guarantee they have a lot of money in it. So I would say that this car should really go for more than $75,000, in my opinion. Someone might get a steal on it. We'll have to see. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Consider subscribing and check out LincolnAddict.com. I have links on there on how to listen to the podcast. We're going to keep the podcast going. Slowly but surely, I'll get new content out. I appreciate the support. ODB, we out of here. Peace.